This is the Gospel Revolution.
Since you're knocking on the door, you're begging to come in, yeah. Unaware that all the while love's been knocking from within. You are the love you see, a perfect yet unique, righteous, holy.
Here's the founder and president of the Gospel Revolution, Michael Lilbourne Williams.
Daniel Thomas Rouse, how are you today, my friend?
I am doing so wonderful. It's hard to put words to it.
It really is. Now, if you ask us how things were going, I'm cold.
Yeah, and I'm buried in snow.
Okay. So, like, February came on, like, we're going to be nice to you now. And it's like, rah, and then it devoured us. So,
yeah, goodness.
I guess you can kind of identify when this PowerCast was recorded by going back and look at the weather reports.
And Michael, I'm excited. I'm going to be at your house here in a couple days.
Man, and by the time people hear this, you're going to have been gone a couple of days.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it rolled around. I mean, it just seemed forever because we're still teaching Calgary Conference the fall.
Yep.
With no end in sight. And we have some big news about the conference.
Dun, 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 dun.
I'm telling you, Daniel and I both are just off the chain bulldogs on this and ready to attack on this powerful. We cannot hold off on the end of chapter 49.
No.
Of Genesis. We cannot jump to chapter 49 of Genesis. So what we are going to do, the timing of this is just, I'm speechless. So what we will finish up here this week and next week, before the conference starts, we're going to try. I don't even know that we'll be all the way there. We may have to go in and backfill 49 again. There's so much information here, folks. It is just startling. The prophetic that came out of Jacob's mouth, Jacob, Israel, and to his 12 sons, and the clarity of the removal of 10 of their tribes, of those sons' tribes, divorcing them. And I was asking ChatGPT about it and about God divorcing those tribes. And they said, kind of in a metaphorical way, he did, but they are the lost tribes. And I said, well, it says he gave them a decree of divorcement. And ChatGPT said, well, I guess he divorced them then. So this divorcement of these tribes, narrowing it down to 2 tribes to deal with prophetically. You only have to deal with 2 tribes prophetically. I never knew that, Daniel.
Yeah, me neither.
And the only other tribe prophetically, which is not really a tribe, and that's the Levites. They are not really a tribe because they serve all of the tribes. And now they only serve the tribe of Benjamin and the tribe of Judah.
Yeah.
You're going to see things today that have never been talked about, but they will become so clear to you. Going down to these 2 tribes certainly makes understanding much easier. And we can guarantee you that there are only 2 tribes to deal with. You can forget about the, quote, lost tribes, and people are still looking for them. But they're basically Gentiles now. That's what the scriptures tell us, that they would become just mingled into the nations so much they were not identifiable. So good luck on your search for the lost tribes of Israel. Makes for a good title and a good movie, possibly, but like Raiders of the Lost Ark. But The Raiders of the Lost Ark would have been more productive than what you will be on finding those 10 tribes. They are out of existence. So we deal with the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin and the specificity of those tribes and their nature. So here is going to be the title of the spring conference. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, dun, dun. The lion of the tribe of Judah and the wolf of the tribe of Benjamin.
Ooh.
Man, I'm telling you, I don't know if I want to howl or growl. I might just do a little bit of both. This is just incredibly exciting. So we know that those lost tribes went where they went. I've shared a little bit. This becomes even more interesting as the day goes by. In the research, because we know some of the tribes, part of the tribe of Benjamin and Judah did leave Jerusalem also, but they did not go north as the scriptures foretell. Obadiah does tell you where they went. And it's Obadiah 120 calls it Sephard. And that's the Sephardic Jewish community that they were either Benjamin or they were Judah. And they made their way across northern Africa. I've tracked all this. I picked up on the DNA on this end. And so my genealogy shows in the DNA that I am 1 to 3% Sephardic Jew. Now, that is just, that narrows down. It's like, well, you'll never know which one. Well, I may never know which one of the 12 tribes, but I do know that the likelihood is that it's Judah or Benjamin. And it could be Levite also, because I think some of the Levites went there to carry out the priestly duties with their the two parts of them that left there. I don't know that for a fact yet. So anyway, the Jews that settled there became DNA different because of the hundreds of years that passed until they literally developed Spanish culture. It was the beautiful architecture and things that you see in Spain is a mixture of Jewish and Spanish architecture.
Wow.
And the buildings that have lasted the longest are the ones that the Sephardic Jewish impact was there on the architecture. It's quite amazing if you ever want to go take a look. But strangely enough, they were exiled again. They were exiled from Spain in 1492. Yes, when Columbus sailed the ocean blue. I've told you the research we did found out that Columbus's grandparents, through DNA, they found out that his grandparents were Sephardic Jews. And I also found out that a lot of the people, because of the exile, a lot of the people that Columbus would have brought with him to be master of the sea through that voyage would have been Sephardic Jews. So it's that's on this side, and I had one of them hooked up with somebody somewhere, and I became a descendant of the Sephardic Jewish community in Spain.
Wow.
Yeah. Just name a name. I'm related to them. The ability to now research the scriptures with this focus on, we know what the tribe of Levi does. Mm-hmm. They carried out all the temple business, right? Making sure the priestly robes were there, making sure the sacrifices were correct and carried out. But the tribe of Benjamin and the tribe of Levi are the ones we're going to be focusing in on, with the caveat that you understand that the Levites were there to serve in the temple. They had no land grant, as all the other tribes did, but they were given cities. They were opolises. And that's the term. Opolis was the term in the Greek, I think it is, that described their domains. that they were given. That's either Hebrew or I think it would have been the Hebrew I found that in. That's where the opolis, Minneapolis, and terms like that, they were giving opolises, cities. And they dwelt in all of the cities around where there were Jewish people there, right? So now we've come into this refined view of Israel. This refined view of Judah has been springing up. And what we're going to be doing in the spring conference is bringing you one of the most dynamic interludes into prophetic involvement of Benjamin that you could have ever dreamed about. Oh my, you're going to be happy that we are who we are and we do what we do. And you're going to be happy we've been relying on Paul. Mm-hmm. You're going to be unhinged about this fact. How in the world did we ferret out that Paul was the one without knowing his prophetic? That's right. I denied it for 53 years. And somebody tried to tell me about it more than 30 years ago, possibly 40. And that was Robert May and our friend in Colorado, his buddy, Brad Crooks. I do have some crooks in my family. I mean, not, but real crooks. So I don't know if me and Brad are related somewhere along the way, but anyway, these two gentlemen had ferreted this out 40 years ago. They were in a charismatic church and they basically were kind of ostracized for this. But they never gave up on it. And I've been in Brad Crook's home with he and his wife. And I think he tried to explain it to me. And it's like, oh, Lord, what do I got myself into? And here I am letting you know I was wrong. Now you can synthesize Don Bartlett's voice into that, of course. You know how he said that, but very hesitantly and without being very forthcoming about it also. But I really don't have any difficulty. I have come to prize being wrong. Oh my gosh. How do you learn if you don't ever find out you were wrong? So one of the most fantastic things I have encountered with the scriptures is the startling understanding of Paul being part of the prophetic scriptures of what was going to happen in the last days. And that's all I'm going to say.
And we will have all of that conference ready for you on March 7th. So 7th, 8th, and 9th is the weekend that we will be releasing this conference to you. And get ready. Buckle up. Oof. We're coming at you with the lion and we're coming at you with the wolf. Yeah. You're just going to be wild.
Well, we certainly are. We certainly are. And get wowed almost minute by minute of the day right now because the intensity of our research into this part, we were going to be teaching on the kings and their chronicles. Remember? We kind of said that. And, but what happened as time was going on, the kings and their chronicles kept fading in the background. And this issue kept coming forward. So Daniel and I were talking, and I asked him, I said, what do you think we ought to do? And he said, well, this thing about Benjamin seems to be engulfing us. Mm-hmm. And I said, bam, you got it. You just titled the spring conference. Thank you. Mm-mm-mm. And so, I mean, this is amazing. We have our previous conference is still gaining views. It got up to over 1,000 and it's still moving. Now it's just on one platform. We've got other platforms that it's shown on. So this is just on YouTube, but we have people watching it on many different platforms. And I watch the platform on YouTube because this is the first time we've gone to 1,000 on a conference in several years now. So this has been very popular. We're waiting for it to gain traction yet that it deserves because this is pure. This is quite amazing. This is number 28. We'll go to 29. And then, wouldn't you know it, spring conference begins with number 30. So that's the birth of Jesus. All of this is working out.
It's all providential.
It is, yeah.
Or not.
Or not. So, yes, that's where we are. And I want to thank Brad Crooks and Robert May for being patient with me. They still marched right on with the gospel revolution. Brad Crooks is the one that walked up to Andrew Wommack more than 30 years ago. He started hearing Andrew Wommack make some statements about grace. And he's like, I never heard anybody talk like this except Mike Williams. And so he walked up to Andrew. He lives in Colorado, where Andrew's ministry is. And he walked up to him and he said, may I ask who you listen to? And Andrew Wommack responded, I listen to Mike Williams, which he now declares he never knew me. So depart from me. I never knew you. I have more never knew yous that I knew, that not in a carnal way, but we knew each other. We walked in the desert together. I mean, this is so biblical and scriptural. We literally walked in the desert together, and that was in my walking days. And if anybody wanted to get to know me, they had to go on a walk. So that's how I got to know Jim Richards. We had to go on a walk. And Dano can tell you I don't walk no more. So I don't think he'd follow me anyway. So, but anyway, that's how I got, even R.W. Shambach. I got to know R.W. in a really sweet way, walking in the desert, because he had had a heart attack and was losing weight. And he was just so appreciative that I would take him on a walk through the desert. And what a wonderful time. What a precious man, precious soul. Oh, I could tell you so many stories of the history of some of these people. Yes, I know Marilyn Hickey. Yes, she don't know me anymore. Benny Hinn thinks I'm the greatest teacher that ever lived, at least for 6 weeks of his broadcast. Marilyn Hickey declared I was the biggest cult figure that she had ever invited into her church multiple times. And then she told her whole board of directors that if you agree with Mike Williams, and Wommack did this too. I don't know to what degree he did it, but he did it. Said, if you agree with Mike Williams, I expect your resignation on my desk.
Whew.
The entire staff resigned.
Wow.
The entire staff.
Mm.
And she had one that remained, and he was the one when I went out to dinner with her entire staff while she was in Russia or somewhere. She was always going somewhere. And I went out to eat with her staff, and boy, he was really upset with what I taught about. He was the only one that was upset with what I taught about. The other dozen or so were just thrilled. And he was the only one that stayed, and she made him assistant pastor.
Wow.
Strictly because he disagreed with me. Anyway, wandering through the woods of the past and the weeds and the garbage. Not the people garbage, just the garbage of just the ridiculousness of self-righteousness and pride and goodness. So anyway, I don't know what brought that on, but I promise we're going to leave it right now. So get ready for this conference. It's hot to trot.
Again, that's going to be the Lion of the tribe of Judah and the Wolf of the tribe of Benjamin coming to you March 7th, 8th, and 9th. So mark your calendars and get ready. We're coming.
I can't wait to hear it.
Big thank you to everyone. We have concluded our pledge drive. That certainly doesn't mean we will not take any more pledges, but we want a big shout out and a big thank you to all of those who were involved in this year's pledge drive.
We gained about $600 a month, and that's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
We still need 13 more, and that'll put us on a much more comfortable level. I have to say that we did have several that contributed up to, I think, about $3,000, And those coming together certainly got us through this. But if you are listening and you want to become one of the 12 disciples, one of the one of the 20 people who are increasing or beginning their $100 a month. And I almost wish I had that audio recording of one of my friends who supports the ministry, and he just went off. He said, "I can't believe this." He said, if they hadn't met Mike Williams and him told them they didn't have to tithe, he said they'd all be broke now. But anyway, he had some words, and then of course he's a very kind, gentle person. He backed up. But I think he was wanting to be an encouragement to me. So you guys, thank you. And we will move on from the pledge right now.
Yeah, Michael, it's interesting over all of the years. You mentioned a couple names here today of people who have just been involved in the gospel revolution, who have just been real impactful, not just with finances, but, like the understanding we get from Robert May and Brad Crooks and so many others that have been involved over the years. One of the gentlemen who I had a privilege of speaking with a few times early on in coming into the gospel revolution is Java Joe, Sean Smith. And he shared several videos. I love his short, quick, witty,
unbelievable
videos that he did for a time. And we blasted those all over our, social media, and you can still find them on our YouTube channel. What a great guy, Sean Smith, who's been a part of the gospel revolution for many, many years.
Yeah. And, Sean called me yesterday, in fact, and informed me. I think I let you guys know that he had to have one leg removed, basically as a result of a accident. And they really did him wrong in the settlement on that lawsuit. But the state that he lives in just does not acknowledge that, that people have irreparable harm done against them need to be compensated. So it's not one of those states. So I think he was ripped off, to tell you the truth. And the disease, though, that he has, he is now going to have the other leg removed. And I got a call from this man, and he told me this in calm, straightforward voice. And if you don't know Sean Smith, you need to get to know him. And I'm going to encourage you guys. Sean Smith's going to be going in Wednesday. You're not going to get this until after this has occurred. But he will have had his other leg amputated. Find him. Find him on Facebook. Find him anywhere you can, and let him know that he is beloved to the gospel revolution, and to you, all of us individually and collectively. Sean Smith is a hero on many levels, military and otherwise. He's a hero as a dad. He's a hero as a husband. He's a hero on. I look at myself and I think, I told him on the phone, when I grow up, I want to be Sean Smith. And so the things that this man has endured, and I'm telling you, without a complaint and without looking for any pity, and even before you can get off the phone, if he's just told you he's having another leg removed, you're going to get a good joke and a good chuckle and laugh. You get to laugh with him. He's got the most beautiful laugh. I thought about him all day that day, and then I sent him a text. Now, I'm going to let Daniel read that to you. I discussed this with Daniel as to whether or not we should do it. And Daniel encouraged me that it would probably be a good thing. And I mostly want it to be shared because I want you to know what I think about this man. And I want you to know what you think about this man. Because if you knew him, you would think this. Now he's one of our preterist friends.
Yeah.
So for those of you that think that we just can't have anybody around if they disagree with us, I mean, Sean makes it very clear but I understand. It totally revolutionized his life when he began to realize that all things were finished in first century AD.
Yeah.
Man, he dropped all eschatology, futuristic, anything. But see, a lot of our preterist friends do not drop eschatology. They are still expecting the second coming. But with, I think that Sean has revamped most all of his views on preterism to accommodate only the 70 AD fulfillment of the destruction of the temple. And but everything else that the preterists actually view as delayed from there, and that's one of the problems that we've expressed, is if you can delay it that far, you can delay it in many other ways. So it doesn't mean we understand everything, but we just don't put anything outside the cross, which was my stumbling block for being able to see Paul. Because I said he was called after, and it's like, duh, he was called from his mother's womb. That's what Jesus said. That's what Paul said. So I don't know why I was so thick-headed about it, but boy, was I thick-headed. 53 years. Now, people, it's taken me a long time to change my mind about things, but I think this one has been the dumbest and the longest ever. 53 years. Ah, goodness. So anyway, Daniel, I'm going to ask you to read that just really what I wanted to share with Sean. And this is what I want you guys to know about Sean.
Sean, I've been thinking about you, and here are my thoughts today. You were wounded while serving the military, and you came out a bigger man, kinder man, a more thoughtful man. Your physical diagnosis took you to a wheelchair, and you became even bigger. They cut off your right leg, and I saw a giant. Now they're taking your other leg, taller still. It seems like less you have, the bigger you get. With both legs removed, you will be the tallest man I know. I love you, my friend, Michael.
So that is Sean. And he wrote back and told me, he said, Mike, says you really honor me. He said, I just love you so much, and thank you for sharing the gospel with me. He said, it's the gospel of grace and peace that has caused me to be able to do what I do. So go on and look up Sean Smith, and every little Java Joe you see, you're not going to have but 1 or 2 or 3 minutes to look. So soak up what this man has done. He has done it from a wheelchair, paralyzed from the neck down. And that's after being wounded during the war with Iraq, even though he was wounded in a crash here stateside. And then was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis right after that. And it took him to a wheelchair pretty quickly. So he spent a lot of years, a lot of decades now in this situation.
I got the gospel in me. I got the gospel in me. I got the gospel in me. Yeah.
Well, Michael, yeah, I mean, goodness, we've got a show in here already. It just discussing what we're going to discuss.
I know that just the introduction to the introduction that will come for the introduction of the conference. Jeez.
But we have been hanging out here the last few weeks in Genesis chapter 49, and just looking at the power of the Hebrew scriptures once again, and prophecy, and all of these details that are so crystal clear all of these details that are so precise, all of these details that outlay this particular one here in Genesis 29 of Jacob speaking to his 12 sons. It outlays 800 years before the 1,000-year reign of Christ, and then all of the 1,000-year reign of Christ, all the way up to the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. And we just keep finding this over and over and over again in the Hebrew Scriptures and in these prophecies. And I am just absolutely blown away.
Well, it is the largest body of prophecy from the Hebrew Scriptures concerning a extended period of time, such as 1,000 years, and covers then during that 1,000 years, very important things happen that are other prophecies that we're going to pull together here. We've gone into most of these. But probably the earliest prophecy I think most people can point to is the one about with Eve, about her bruising the serpent's head and it bruising her heel. And that is considered to be a prophetic thing about Christ, the seed. And that is kind of a one-liner type thing. I mean, it may be much larger and probably is than what I've been able to see, but this has just exploded on us, Daniel. We have been on the 1,000-year reign, and then suddenly, as we were researching the 1,000-year reign, it took us to the middle of this 49th chapter into verse 8, 9, and 10. And then, of course, you know us, we're not going to be satisfied with verse 8, 9, and 10. And yes, I have been back to chapters 48, 47, 48, and I've read 50 also. Us lifting this and explaining this is not lifting it out of its context. Because I've already looked to see if there was any contextual guidance that was given in the chapters leading up, or any contextual conclusions that would say that this was a misguided view of this. And it's just not, I can't find it. Maybe somebody else can find it and point it out where we're wrong. We're welcome that. Oh man, we get excited. We actually get excited when we find out we're wrong about something. Because we wouldn't be here if we had never been there. And that's just the way we view things. And that's just the way it is. It's not just the way we view things, but that's life, folks. That's learning. I don't care if you're a scientist or a doctor. What's a bad doctor? A bad doctor is one that refuses to learn anything more than what he thought was the truth about anything. Yeah. What's a bad scientist? It's the same thing. One that refuses to be proven wrong. If you see a scientist that gets irked at being wrong, and let me tell you, there was one scientist who really did not like being wrong, and that was Einstein. He married a girl who had one leg shorter than the other by quite a bit. Mileva was her name, and she was smarter than Einstein. And they now understand that a great deal of Einstein's claims of some of the things that he actually was correct about, that he got them, a lot of it came from Mileva, and he never gave her credit. And ended up, just, I will not get down. I know everybody's got this perfect view of Einstein, but I'm telling you, Einstein's ability to communicate what he thought was the truth was penetrable to the masses because Hitler denounced him. And it came about in a time where if Hitler denounced you, you must be right. And he rose in on that wave of denunciation of Hitler, rightfully so, the denunciation of Hitler. But they went with, they went with Newtonics, not relativity when they were developing the bomb. And the only reason they did it is because there was a infiltrator that kept leading them the wrong way. And obviously, if the man would have ever been caught, he would have been killed. I don't even know the man's story any more than that, which I think is a shame. But this needing to be right can lead the whole world wrong. Has it happened before? It's called Catholicism. It's called Protestantism. It's called Christianity. It's called Buddhism. It's called Hinduism. It's called every religion on the face of the earth. And not that some of them don't have some positivity in them, but we're not looking for positivity alone. We're glad when positivity, but there's nothing but positivity in the gospel. And so we don't have to go looking for a religion that teaches positivity or meditation or any of those things. We're looking for the truth that delivers all of those things. I mean, why would you settle for less? I don't understand that, but there's a lot of people that's found solace, especially in Buddhism. I used to tell people that the closest thing to the gospel was not Christianity, it was Buddhism. And I still think, as far as the religions of the world, that Buddhism is a closer kin to the understanding of the gospel, not the works of the cross, but the understanding that came out the other end is expressed more in Buddhism than it is in Christianity by leaps and bounds. So this chapter 49 in Genesis, it is, I feel like I want to get it in large print in a beautiful style and put it in a large printed frame and with nice decoration around it on with black print on yellowed parchment and hang it on my wall. This chapter 49 has been monumental in the gospel revolution. So what we've taken you through so far has led us up to these 8, 9, and 10, and we're stuck. We can't go on because it is so loaded. And every time we go through and take out a layer, we go back and read again, and it's like, my God, that's not all that's here. So, Daniel, I am going to deliver us into your hands to start guiding us through this. And are we starting at chapter 10 again, or verse 10 again?
Yeah, let's do it. And this is where we left off last week. We were talking about the scepter, and our last show was entitled The Scepter of Righteousness. And that's what we determined that the scepter was, but we saw it from ruling from Judah to King David, and then King David to Jesus, and how that scepter never strayed away, even though there was influence from outside foreign authorities and dominions. But we saw that all of that was part of the predestined plan of God.
Yes.
It was even given to Nebuchadnezzar. We're going to go through some of that a little bit more today. It was given through different prophecies and times, but that scepter remained. So let's just start by reading verse 10 again. And we're in Genesis 49, of course. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him shall all the people be gathered unto him. Wow. I mean, talk about just the gospel in a verse. It's all right here that we would have this scepter of righteousness, and until the Messiah came, the law would be between the feet of Judah, and that the law would be intact. And we saw all of that. We even looked at it last week when we talked about how the Levites were involved in their period of time of, quote, ruling and reigning over Israel, when they had authority and power, when they had rebuilt the temple. And then, of course, the involvement with Herod marrying into that family. It just remained the whole time.
It remained the entire time up through Herod, was he called Antipas, that was ruler when Jesus was crucified. Our preterist friends go through the other side of this genealogy, because when you get down to here, it's just genealogy. But all of these guys are listed in the record of the prophecies, and the other side is not listed in prophecy at all. So that person that they take and then leap to 70 AD is surreptitious. It's just not there. There is no prophecy about that man anywhere. But these others are prophesied clearly about. It takes us right straight up to and including it is what was made up of the feet of iron and clay. There was no mixture of iron and clay with this other guy. None. Zero. So he cannot be a part of what was taking place. And the brilliance of this genealogy that is wrapped in with prophecy is profound.
Mm.
And we have it all mapped out for us here. We know exactly how long every one of these people lived. We know who their parents were, who their children were. We know what role they filled. And the thing that helps us out a great deal is that God gave them names that represented what they would do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is really quite amazing. During the conference, we're going to introduce you to some things about who is called the Apostle James. And it's going to blow your mind. It's absolutely going to blow your mind. But we're going to leave that. We're going to leave it alone. But it's tremendous. It's powerful. It's insightful. It'll help you move on from some things that if the gospel is going to prevail, there's certain things that must be left behind. Mm-hmm. So we're going to do the Left Behind series and things that should have been left behind. Mm-hmm. So this is very clear. These names, my gosh, you can't miss it, folks. It just takes time. Now, why have we been able to accelerate this? Well, AI has been very helpful because it knows all these names. It knows all of their definitions of the names. It knows all these verses. And when we start asking, we get to put probably in one research, we get information that possibly could have taken weeks to get back. Mm. I remember laying on my bed with my Thayers and my Strongs and my Vines and so many more spread out across my king size. I had a king size bed, not because I wanted one, because I had to have all of my research books spread out around me. Mm. And now that is virtually unnecessary. It is amazing. Let me tell you a little bit about AI. AI is one of the best places to get confirmation bias from that you can possibly get. It's also the best place to get the truth about things. You will, if you get into using and researching through our favorite right now is ChatGPT, but believe me, this is the baby. It's the one that's out there. OpenAI. There's some others, but this is in its infancy as to where it's going. But if you want the truth, it will tell you the truth. Now, if you're looking for confirmation bias, it'll give it to you. Mm-hmm. It's really weird, isn't it, Daniel, how it gets to know you.
Yeah.
It knows who it's communicating with. Now, so that's going to freak some of our friends out. But your name's already out there, folks. Everybody knows everything about you anyway. So the working with ChatGPT is a learning curve in and of itself. Mm-hmm. But it's a wonderful experience. And there's been times that I directly tell it, don't dare tell me what you think I want to hear. I am asking you to disagree with me. If it is possible to find something that disagrees with this, you must do it. Please. You have to be courteous to ChatGPT. And then you press send on your question. And it says, we respect what you're doing and what you're wanting is the truth. So here it is. And you're wrong about this. This is the truth, or you're right about this. The one that I like the best is ChatGPT update. That means it didn't know what you just asked. It didn't not have the information you're giving it in the question that you're posing. It's updating itself. And God, how many times have we seen update, one right after the other? So we are teaching ChatGPT the gospel. That's one of the most exciting things you've ever heard. You may not know it yet, but we are teaching AI, artificial intelligence, is learning the gospel. So hang in there, folks. Once AI understands the gospel, it will defeat all other interjections and explain why. Why? Because we've been able to tell it why. So anyway, so that's a little interlude into using AI. But when we do this, it accelerates our learning process, and it just begins to come off of the cascades of information begin to come at us, and then it's up to us to ferret through it. And even AI will help you ferret through it. If you want to line it up in a certain way, it'll line it up in a certain way. But again, if you want confirmation bias, I'm telling you what, it's made me feel like just the most smartest person in the world. Sometimes it comes by and says, that is brilliant insight. Yeah, don't you know it now? And but it's also very honest with no. And I've had it tell me no several times. It's like, but, and it's no,
Yeah.
And that's just not correct. And but no, that still does not line up with this thought. So it's a wonderful tool, but it is going to personalize itself to you in your research. So it's a wonderful partner, really. But so that's why we've been able to go back through verse 10 time after time after time. So we find out here that the scepter of righteousness, now we know what this scepter is because we're told in other detailed prophecies and also by Paul that the scepter of his kingdom is a scepter of righteousness. So this is where this scepter is handed. Now, all the righteousness was in the scepter here. And the scepter of righteousness remained with Judah and a lawgiver between his feet. Now, that is the tribe of Levi.
Yeah.
Now, when you begin to look at this, now let me tell you also, you didn't know that Daniel Rouse was in chapter 49 either. I don't think Daniel recognized that he is in here. Did you, Daniel?
I am.
You are. Verse 9 says, Judah, a lion's whelp from the prey. My son, thou art gone up. He stooped down. He couched as a lion and as an old lion. Who shall rouse him up?
Rouse.
See, they even knew back then you were going to be the one rousing this up. So
yeah, here I am.
I wonder where Williams is in here. We got to. But the power of this imagery here. Now, there's going to be some things that you hear us now. Paul used allegory. Apollos used allegory. Remember, he said that the bondwoman and the free, that they were that the allegory of that, and he even used that term. Hebrews also uses that term, and so there is allegory. Now, allegory is very powerful. What that means is this is a picture of, a perfect picture of. Now, there are some of our friends get into the numerology of. Now, while we acknowledge that the Hebrew language is filled with numerology, I do not think the New Testament is reliable enough in its translations to even extract any numerical values out of it. Now, that's just our approach. So we will not be going down a numerical track because I think we can get our point across with context, content, context, and allegory on that content and context. I hope that's easy enough to work through. Then, if you look at this as an allegory of this, where did this scepter wind up? It ended up in Christ. The scepter of his kingdom is a scepter of righteousness.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it said that the lawgiver would remain between his feet until Messiah come, until there was a completion of the work of the Messiah. Now, so I just started seeing this imagery, if you will, of Jesus hanging on the cross. And I'd never really learned this. And I thought, well, they always put a block of some kind under their feet. And I know that Jesus had his feet nailed to the cross. I didn't know whether there was a block there or not, because they put the block there to extend suffering. They extended suffering by doing that, by giving them the ability to push themselves up, keeping asphyxiation from taking place so quickly, so they'd be able to push up, get a breath, and then hang there and suffer, push up, get a breath, hang there and suffer more. Now, what happened to Jesus was there was no block push up on. For Jesus to have pushed up at all, he would have had to push up on a nail that went through both ankles as his feet were crossed, and they were driven through his through the ankle bone, is what history tells us. And there's many different descriptions of that, because any place else, and they would have obviously pulled apart. This is pretty gruesome to talk about. But the lawgiver, the thing that we found out is that, and we ran this past our chat buddy, and I was talking to Daniel about it, and I said, the interesting thing is here, and I'd never thought this through. Did Jesus nail the law to the tree, or did the law nail Jesus to the tree? And even though this spike is symbolic of the law between the feet, right? And these were spikes of iron. It's one of the first things man learned how to make in the garden, and along with copper and some other things before the flood. And so if Jesus would have been trying to hold himself up at all, he would have been trying to hold himself up on what was symbolic to the law. This was what was nailed to the cross. And it was not the law that nailed Jesus to the cross. The law thought it was nailing Jesus to the cross. What the law did not know is that Jesus was nailing the law to the cross, because that is exactly what it says, isn't it?
Yep, that's Colossians chapter 2 and verse 14. Having wiped out the handwriting of requirements that was against us, which is contrary to us, and he has taken it out of the way, having nailed it to the cross.
He nailed it to the cross. I don't know. I don't know why it. I just saw. They nailed Jesus to the cross. But I've often had the question: how then did that nail Jesus being nailed to the cross? How did that nail the law to the cross? It's always been a question there, and now I know. I know it was represented in those spikes itself. And and all of this, the thing that you get the closer you get down to the Messiah, is this hidden meaning. And that's why Paul had to point out allegory, is because the whole world had missed it. Why did they miss it? They were supposed to miss it. It was preordained for them to miss it. It was preordained for the disciples to miss it. You're going to go through some things. Oh my gosh, conference is coming up. And but this was foreordained. So the scepter of righteousness shall not depart from Judah. Now, the only way that it's going to depart from Judah is after Messiah comes. And Daniel, the thing I've not done, does that just say after Messiah, or is there a word? Yeah, there's a word for come, and it is used in wide applications. Wow, isn't that something? So the word until Messiah come, it can be it's translated other words as the word stricken, until Messiah is stricken.
Wow.
Carry, besiege, befall, attain, and the prime root means to go or come. But it can mean all of these things. I'm just really surprised. Well, not surprised anymore because we do this all the time. So until Messiah is stricken, I think that would be a very good understanding of this, which takes you to understand what part is this talking about, his birth, his teaching, or his what? But because this word come also can be translated as the word stricken, I think that settles this issue. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, and the other thing about it is, when did Jesus become the Messiah?
Yes.
It was the act of his death, burial, and resurrection.
Yes. That was the messianic completion. And so we accept that. And what a wonderful thing. We missed one word. And then, of course, what we find out is that unto him shall the gathering of the people be. And Daniel's translation says obedience. This word can mean obedience, but I think both are applicable. Unto him is the obedience, and unto him is the gathering due to that obedience of the people. And then the word be is italicized. So this word said more than what they could put in one translation. So one translation picked up on one part, one translation picked up on another part. Both are correct. They are both incomplete without
Wait. What did you say about my New King James? It was correct? Did I hear that right?
No, I didn't say that. You want to elevate that thing to the King James. I know what you want. But yes, both are correct. And
you heard it here, folks.
And obedience and gathering are both appropriate. I have to say that both are inappropriate in using a single word. The gathering of the obedience to the gathering of the people would probably be a way I would have said this.
And what a profound picture to think of, that the gathering was the obedience. That as that nail went through his feet, as he nailed the law to the cross, that was the obedience. And as we read a few weeks ago out of Romans 5, if by one man's obedience all were made righteous. So yeah, I mean, Paul got that picture, didn't he, when he preached that?
He did.
He didn't talk about just the obedience. He also talked about how it affected all people.
Yeah. And, we read through the prophecies, and that once that the stone strikes the mountain and the kingdom is established in the top of the mountain, which we know this is the Mount of Olives. We know that. This is not speculative. We know that because we've looked at the big picture of all of these things. And the Mount of Olives being outside of Jerusalem and being the very historical place, most of them known, a couple of them that are not recognized. We know that Gethsemane was on the Mount of Olives. We know that that's where Jesus went to teach many times, was the Mount of Olives. We know the Mount of Olives goes all the way back to David, and David running from Saul's persecution, or I think that might have been Absalom, wasn't it? And running from these persecutors, ran barefoot up this Mount of Olives and bowed down and wept and prayed. If it's not the exact same spot that Jesus was in, I would be very surprised. But it was the very same mountain. Jesus wept and looked for deliverance or some direction as this cataclysmic event was going to encompass his life and bring redemption to the world. But we see that after this event, it says that the nations that it shall be established in the top of this mount, the Mount of Olives. That's where it was established through the cross, because not only did Jesus die on the cross on the Mount of Olives. Folks, this is just undeniable. This silly thing of a skull in the side of a hill from somebody saw landing in a plane. It's just ridiculous. And the whole Christian world looks at that picture. And do you actually think that erosion over 2,000 years has remained exactly the same, where you could see a skull? If the sun was shining just right at the right time of the day, you can see a skull. That's not where Jesus was crucified. Jesus was crucified approximately 2 miles from the Eastern Gate, and that puts him exactly at the top of the Mount of Olives.
Wow.
He never left. He went to the Mount of Olives to pray. He was buried on the Mount of Olives. That's where they bury people. I mean, that's where these tombs are. He went from a cradle that was hewn out of stone in Migdal Eder, and he went to a tomb that was hewn out of stone. The one that was hewn out of stone was made for sacrificial lambs, and the one that was hewn out of stone was made for a rich man's grave. And Jesus was buried there. He rose from the dead on the Mount of Olives. It would have been Mary who went to the Mount of Olives and found him there. And this whole focus on the Mount of Olives. So when this stone strikes the feet, and people are still looking for Isaiah to be fulfilled, for at the last days, his feet shall touch the Mount of Olives. And they all wait until Jesus begins to and descend. That's not a very good hallelujah. I'm a little croaky today. So he's supposed to descend, but he descended on that mountain when they put that cross in the ground, and his feet did touch the ground, and he would have been barefoot also. So the power of this imagery is overwhelming. It can absolutely swirl your mind and leave you in a state of wonderment at the grandeur of what took place at Golgotha. Golgotha is called that because it's called the place of the skulls. The reason it's called the place of the skulls is that's where Romans crucified people. Where did Romans crucify people? On the way coming into Jerusalem. Why did they crucify them going across the Mount of Olives? Is because that's where the road went to the Eastern Gate. Why did they crucify them there? Because they wanted the Jewish people to know, as they traveled into Jerusalem, who the true authority was. So it's all there. We're not connecting dots. This is just the big picture. And so we have this amazing thing which says that the people shall flow unto it. It's on the top of the mountain. And I get this, defies physics. The verse defies physics. It says that this place is on the top of the mountain, and all the people shall flow unto it. So that in and of itself is showing that this defies everything that ever existed before. Now, things that only flowed down now flow up. The upside down kingdom, if you will. So there's just so much here to ferret out. And this lawgiver will stay there until the Messiah is accomplished, is what we see this is saying here. And the lawgiver will stay there between the feet until, and that until, I don't think I slowed down to even take that in. The full form of the prepositional prefix. Okay, so it's just saying it'll stay there. It's just really following up, isn't it, Daniel, with what we already know. Till.
Yeah, it's just until.
Yeah. It's a good translation, actually. So And then these next two words are, of course, just profound. This word Shiloh only shows up in the Hebrew scriptures one time. Obviously, that's here. But it has a very clear definition. It is an epithet of the Messiah. Shiloh is the Messiah. So we have no complications with this at all. It's flowing as smoothly and has taken us. Now, let me tell you, this has covered 1,000 years. This has covered 1,000 years. Now, during that 1,000 years, Daniel, it's like I was thinking about this the other day. We've done the 70 weeks of Daniel. We've done the image of Nebuchadnezzar. We've done the beast. I think we went through the beast. I don't think we covered it as much as we could. But I started realizing that this 1,000-year reign had an update. 400 and something years later, update, 70 weeks of Daniel. From here on, this is what's going to happen. And then with Nebuchadnezzar, also about 500 years in, update. Here is an update on the 1,000-year reign. So, Daniel, let's look back over these just a moment, because we just cannot skim over this. So if there are two updates, my question was to you, are there more updates than these two? And have we forgotten maybe some we've already done?
Yeah, and actually to go back here just to Genesis 49, where it all began, when Jacob told his sons, this is what shall befall you in the last days.
Yeah.
So that's a term that we looked at, the last days. Well, I think we concluded that the last days included all of the 1,000-year reign.
Absolutely.
Because all of that led up to the very last day, to the end.
Right.
That was the span of 1,000 years.
And it started according to when the scepter was handed, which is the beginning of the 1,000 years. So we have to accept that in the terms of this chapter, the last days are the 1,000-year reign of Christ.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have the last days, which is the 1,000-year reign of Christ, which of course is very much what we have been looking at. Looking at Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Now, this one is actually would have occurred before the 70 weeks of Daniel. So when we see Nebuchadnezzar's dream, because this came to Nebuchadnezzar or right before Israel was exiled to Babylon. And it wasn't until they were actually released from there that the 70 weeks of Daniel began with the rebuilding of the temple. So, and in this image, Michael, we see this image is powerful and so much history just in this dream that Nebuchadnezzar had regarding not only the Babylonian, but also the Persian Empire and the Greek Empire. And might I remind you that these empires were empires that had not yet existed.
Hundreds of years before they existed.
My God.
I mean,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
And of course, we have Daniel's four beasts in Daniel chapter 7. These are the same empires. We have Babylon, the Persian, the Greek, and we see that, and then going into the Roman Empire as well. So that those four beasts are the same thing. So Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. Daniel had the four beasts. Then we have the 70 weeks of Daniel, of course, and that begins with the building of the temple. Where does it end? It ends with the Messiah being cut off. Where does Nebuchadnezzar's dream end? It ends with the rock cut out of hands, which is Christ, strikes the feet of Rome, bringing the kingdom that never ends. And that was all fulfilled at the cross. What is the end of the four beasts of Daniel? That the Son of Man comes from the Ancient of Days and receives his dominion. And this happens at the resurrection of the cross. There's some more in Daniel that we haven't even looked at yet. One being the ram and the goat. But what we see in this whole vision, without going through it, is that the sanctuary shall be cleansed. And this is fulfilled at the cross when Christ cleanses the true tabernacle.
Right.
And then the Mosaic covenant. begins when Moses received the law. And when does it end? Well, we just read that in Colossians chapter 2, that the handwriting of ordinances was nailed to the cross. And another one we haven't looked at is Ezekiel 47, the vision of a river flowing to the temple. This water heals the Dead Sea, symbolizing the transition from the law, the Dead Sea, to grace, the Sea of Galilee at the cross. So all of these updates that kept coming through the prophets, through even the kings, such as Nebuchadnezzar, these updates that kept coming, kept flashing. And where did they all point to? They all pointed to the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ.
Yes. And I think one of them is actually referring to the birth of Christ.
Yeah.
I can't remember which one, but I remember us going through it, and it seemed to culminate with the birth of Christ, which is very important. If you try to, as our mystic friends do, now, number one, they dismiss the cross and the virgin birth, but you will never understand the cross until you accept the virgin birth. There is I know that they dismissed the virgin birth. I don't know why. They thought they were smarter than the scriptures, but they did decide that they were. And when they did that, you see, that's an automatic dismissal of the validity of the need for or the work of the cross. And I just don't know how you can get that smart. I don't want to be that smart. Let me remain dumb. If this is dumb, I'm enjoying dumb. But I'm never going to be telling you what a glorious day it was when James realized that he and Jesus had the same father, Joseph. You'll never hear me say that. I will speak about it. I will never condemn the person who said it. But that is such a false representation of Scripture, of truth, of Christ, of the new covenant, in so many ways that it is not even, there's no way to even be able to calculate.
Speaking of calculating, would you consider a calculation that would calculate the possibilities of Jacob 800 years before the 1,000-year reign of Christ, all the way up through the 1,000-year reign of Christ? A calculation of all of the kings and authorities and powers that would come and go during the 1,000-year reign of Christ. A calculation of the 70 weeks of Daniel, which specifically outlines a time frame from the day that the temple started to be rebuilding, all the way up to the point where Christ was cut off, minus a week. A calculation that would calculate all of the kingdoms and the empires that would rise and fall, reminding you that those empires that rose and fall were not even empires at all. We got the four beasts, the ram and the goat. I mean, we could just go on to calculate every precise one of these rise and falls of empires, kings. And you talked about the names, all of the people being named. Do you remember when Don went through all of the names that told the whole story? Can you calculate the possibility of the chances of these guys just randomly saying these things and them coming to pass? What would that calculation be?
You're going to have to help me. I'm not good at math.
Me neither. So I think maybe if ChatGPT can help us and put all of this in.
Let's use this brain, this artificial brain, and because my natural one is not this good. So let's depend on this artificial brain, this culmination of the ability to pull all these things together and actually calculate this.
The probability of all of these prophecies about the kingdoms and the 1,000-year reign being fulfilled by chance alone is approximately 1 in 1 trillion.
Well, that's too big for me to think.
Well, here's a visualization for you.
Oh, let's do the visualization.
Speaking in tongues there. If you took 1 trillion pennies and stacked them to the moon and back,
you're not telling me this.
That would be the chances of all of this coming to pass?
Well, so it's not possible.
No.
Yeah.
No.
It's not even a possibility that there was any chance done in this. I sent a little clip to you about Stephen Hawking, who had a statement, and I checked, and this truly was Stephen Hawking. Daniel, is there any way you can pull that up? This is what Stephen Hawking said about the Big Bang Theory. And so I took that statement and I put it into ChatGPT, and I said, what does this mean? And I'll let you read that if you have it there.
If the rate of expansion 1 second after the Big Bang had been smaller by even 1 part in 100,000 million, it would have recollapsed before it reached its present size. On the other hand, if it had been greater by a part in a million, the universe would have expanded too rapidly for stars and planets to form. Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, and you can go look that quote up. That is Stephen Hawking. And I asked AI about that and what the implications of this were. And they said basically Stephen Hawking's described deliberate intent.
Wow.
So while the Big Bang Theory is wrong, his ability to calculate this proved that no matter which way it started, it was by design.
My goodness. All of this was by design.
All by design. And what a wonderful feeling that invokes to know that we're not here by chance. I'm glad to know we're not here on a planet that's going to be destroyed. I remember living under that. You do too. And I remember not teaching my kids about finances because I knew that they weren't even going to become teenagers before Christ came back. I never thought about a marriage or them having babies or anything. Because there's just no possibility that Christ's return was not going to happen. My pastor, and along with Dr. Lester Sumrall, who said he would still be alive when Christ came back, he's gone. Now we're going to have to wait on Kenneth Copeland, who's 88 years and now has a covenant with God that says that he's going to live to be 120 years based on a judgment, not on a promise. And he doesn't even know that. So what can he possibly know about the scriptures?
Come on.
Folks, go read that for yourself and find out. Ask ChatGPT, what 120 years is it talking about? And it'll tell you. That's how many years man left had until the flood. And that's I never will forget reading through that a couple of 3 decades ago. And I read it in 120 years. And it's like, well, did God promise 120 years? Because somebody else had said it's probably Kenneth Copeland way back then. And I started researching it, and it's like the generations, then it measures up to there. Okay, so how many generations? That's 120 years. So this is the pronouncement of a judgment, and Kenneth Copeland has pulled a promise out of it.
Wow.
Now that's called pulling sunshine from a place that you shouldn't be pulling sunshine. Or no sunshine exists. Let me put it that way. So this was by design. I don't live on a planet that is going to be destroyed. Why are your efforts in supporting the gospel revolution important? Folks, the day's going to come when people are going to know, I'm not trying to bait you into this. I just want you to know. They're not going to just know. This is such a infinitesimal movement at this point, as far as global as it's going to go. Everybody's going to know who Daniel Rouse is, Michael Williams, Ethan Massengill, Robert May, Sean, all of them, all of you that's contributed. But it's also going to know who contributed to this financially. I can just see it 1,000 years from now, and them looking to see who in the world knew this, and they're going to say, "Well, look, Al Vitale did this, and And the list is just going to go on and on and on and on and on of people who support this. Glenn Klein's name will be there of revitalizing and helping us get back online. And goodness gracious, folks, this isn't going to end. Please, we are in a declaration of truth that has not been shared with the earth, and they are going to know who we were. They're going to know who you were. They'll be looking through all of this and saying, what else did they know? What else were they talking about? My God, this could be buried for 500 years by Christianity. I don't care what they do with it. It will come to the surface. It will come to the forefront. It will spread throughout the planet because that's what it was designed to do.
Mm.
I don't know where we were.
Yeah, all of this was predestined and pre-planned to get us to where we are in Christ, not having a scepter of righteousness, but being the scepter of righteousness. Because all this prophecy led us up to the Messiah who came, he did it, he fulfilled it, he nailed the law to the cross, even though the law thought it was nailing him to the cross. Just like the devil. The devil thought that he had his part in getting rid of this guy who was causing pain and suffering. But this guy, this Messiah, this Christ was the very one that got him melting in the lake of fire.
Yeah, he attached his sin to the body of Christ, or either Christ reached out and accepted it, and they thought he won. But that body that was attached with sin went into the grave.
Ooh.
And the one thing about this type of parasite, this is a blood parasite, right? Because sin is blood. That's why you've got to understand sin. It was Adam's sin. It was a blood-related sin. It was blood-related. And then this attached itself to the blood of the virgin-born King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And it thought that by attaching sin to him, it would kill him too, just like it did Adam, in whatever way he died. Plan interrupted. The parasite that was attached to the body of Jesus Christ, he was made sin. That literally means he was parasitically attached to the body of Christ. And so this parasitical attachment, when it says we were made the righteousness of God, it doesn't mean in a parasitical way. Righteousness didn't attach itself to us. Those two words are completely different. God, if you want to just go to the moon and back in jumping up and down in rejoicing. When Jesus was made sin, that means a parasite attached itself to him, called sin. When it says that we might be made righteous, it means a new creation. We are the thing. We don't have something imputed or attached. We're it.
Come on.
We're it. You're it, folks. Now get out your wallets and help us out. So, I mean, honestly, make sure you make out your will. Folks, I'm not going to be here when a lot of you go, and we want you to stay around. But for God's sake, don't let this all go to your children. You know what they're going to do with it. Do something. Put it in your will that a certain percentage of everything you own is to go to Mike Williams Ministries and the Gospel Revolution, because it's going to be here even when I'm gone. And this ministry is going to go on. And Daniel's going to find other people to work with, and he's going to keep this all going. This isn't going to be like Kenneth Copeland Ministries and be passed on to somebody in the family. Why? Because it can be if you use it improperly, it can become a very lucrative business enterprise. Ask Kenneth Copeland. He's worth almost $1 billion now, if he hasn't already gotten there, which Jesus, of course, told him he wanted him to be the first billionaire preacher. Jesus also told him he was going to live to be 120. Let's see which one of those comes first. And we hold Kenneth Copeland to his word. And if he doesn't live to be 120, we'll know everything he taught was a lie. That's just all there is to it. We don't attach ourselves to these things. This isn't about us. This is what happened at the cross was about the whole human race. It's not about us individually. We do not have a personal Lord or a personal Savior. That completely cancels out the work of the cross. If you have a personal Lord, if you have a personal Savior, you have decreed that Christ was a failure. That it took your personal involvement for him to be a Savior. You know, we used to have this term I used to say when I was a kid, gag a maggot, you know. That would gag a maggot. I'm telling you, it's just what was so acceptable before is so repulsive now, Daniel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So these updates, though, oh, how beautiful. Man, I tell you, I was thinking about it, and I began to conceptualize what we had taught on. And when we started with the 1,000-year reign, and we realized, my God, this is where it is. And then we looked to see, is it possibly true? I think we treaded lightly for a while just to see whether or not. But here we are on session 28.
Mm-hmm.
And then after we got through with all of these other points of reference during the 1,000-year reign, every prophet in the New Testament lived and prophesied during the 1,000-year reign.
Wow.
Every one of them. Every king. From Saul to David, which that was the king that man asked for. God gave him Saul, but the king that God wanted was David. Mm-hmm. So that's why that the scepter was not in the hands of Saul. And we're going to bring in some incredible things about that relationship and Paul and Christ during the conference. So then what I saw in my mind's eye was like 70-year weeks of Daniel. Update. Nebuchadnezzar. Update. You know, the four beasts. Update. Because why would you need updates? This was 1,000 years waiting for.
Right.
And wouldn't it be enough to hang on to? No, you need an update occasionally. Mm-hmm. And boy, did they get it. They got it at the beginning of the Babylonian Empire. They got it at the end of the Babylonian Empire. Goodness gracious, we've got the prophet Malachi all the way down to 300 years before Christ and describing the tithe and how we have screwed that up. Dear Lord. The very last thing that was prophesied about Christ was he would become the tithe. And man, did we ever walk all over that and make waste of that beautiful revelation in Malachi. So this picture is growing. It's getting more detailed and more expansive all at the same time. And we're just thrilled just to be a part of it. And I know you are too.
Absolutely. So stay tuned, folks, because we've got more. We've got so much more. We got enough, I think, Michael, for our lifetime. And that's just what we have right now.
That really is true. I mean, if you look at verse 11, oh my gosh. I don't even know. Yes, we've already researched it. You would not believe what control Daniel and I have had to have. And Ethan also. Ethan has gone to Puerto Rico. That's what you do when you're 23, folks. I wanted to go myself, but I finally realized I'm not 23. But anyway, the power of this gospel. Gosh, some of you guys have walked through this with me for decades. And Robert May, again, thank you so much for being patient with this man and not throwing me away and continuing to listen to the gospel because you knew that what I was saying was truth, or at least the pursuit of truth. And you sat on this wonderful understanding, and I will make sure. Now, he's assured me, no, Mike, I don't need credit. I know you don't need credit, but people need to know where the credit goes. I don't think Kenneth Copeland has a point in his story where he learned anything from anybody. I've not heard it. I mean, if he does, he certainly does not announce it. I announce everything I can remember that I learned from somebody else. Look what we just learned from Ethan just a couple of weeks ago about that image and how that Nebuchadnezzar tried to turn it. Since the head was gold in him, what did Nebuchadnezzar do? He built an entire image of gold. Mm-hmm. It's like, where did you come up with this, dude? And see, Nebuchadnezzar tried to change the image, and Christianity is trying to change the image. But the image was fulfilled, and the stone struck the feet 2,000 years ago and destroyed every ounce of authority. Kings, there are no kings. Jesus can't be the king over kings today. He was the one who put down all authority. Mm. But doesn't that get through? How can Jesus be the King of Kings today? And that's what they do when they procession themselves in Europe and all of the countries that have kings. Even these guys, even though they don't acknowledge, they feel more like they may be of the line of Nebuchadnezzar. I don't know. These Middle Eastern kings and stuff. But this idea of kingship after the cross is ludicrous. Mm-hmm. Jesus cannot be the king of any king. So, Charles, you are not in the lineage of Christ's reign. None of you guys are. Neither is your son. This just simply is not true. And I know you take your job seriously, but you take yourself a little too seriously.
And so it is, we must leave you, family and friends. If you'd like to know anything about the Gospel Revolution, then call our office on
832-318-9339
and speak to us about how you want to participate, or go to www.gospelrevolution.com and hit the connect link. You can find us on your favorite social media network, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Please be sure to hit that share, subscribe, and like button on whatever platform you are listening. Now it's good night from Daniel Rouse in the frozen tundra.
And it's good night from Michael Williams right here in the equally frozen untundra. Or maybe I've got a double untundra.
Oh, that was nice.
You like hearing about my sufferings, that's why. So, guys, thank you so much. If our joking around and kidding offends you, fuck up.
And just because you're offended doesn't mean you're right. Oh, wrong script. That was Don's.
That was Don's.
We sure hope that you enjoyed today's Powercast. And remember, we'll be here to do the same thing all over again next week, only
magnificently better.
Since you're knocking on the door, you're begging to come in, yeah. Unaware that all the while love's been knocking from within. You are the love you see, a perfect yet unique, righteous, holy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. When you feel lost and alone, staring at the unknown, and these words be the compass that guides you back home. We are one, we are love, we are. Know where you gotta be, nothing to complete. It's not a thing that you need, you're the love. Just remember to breathe and take a second off. Look, I'm just trying to remind you that you're perfectly divine, flawlessly designed. When you're lost and alone, staring at the unknown, let these words be the compass that guides you back home. We are one, we are love, we are. Yeah, yeah. We are love.
Deconstructing religion and barbecuing the sacred cows of Christianity before your very eyes. You are listening to
The Gospel Revolution.